Um, so the book didn't say hello, yes. That was me saying hello, yes, because my mum knocked on my door to come say hello to me, which was really nice. And you are at your concert, and they've just come on stage, and I hope you have lots of fun, and I love you very much. Okay, so you used ATP, RNA transcription, and a whole host of other extremely familiar things. Some researchers speculated that it originated on Earth. Others postulated this specific set of molecules was the only way for life to occur, and astrophage evolved it independently, and a smaller vocal fraction suggested life might not have evolved on Earth at all, and that astrophage and terrestrial life have a common ancestor. You know, I told the astrophage, if you boys weren't threatening all life on my planet, you'd be pretty awesome. You have mysteries within mysteries. I leaned against the table. You have mitochondria. Okay, that means you use ATP as your energy storage, just like we do. But the light you use to move around requires way more energy than your ATP could hold. So you have another energy storage pathway. One we don't understand. One of the astrophage on screen darted slightly to the left. It was pretty common, once in a while for no reason. They'd just wiggle. What makes you move? Why move? And how does this random jerky motion get you all the way from the sun to Venus? And why Venus at all? Lots of people were working on the internals of the astrophage, trying to figure out what made it tick, analysing its DNA. Good for them. I wanted to know the basic life cycle. That was my goal. Single-celled organisms don't just store buttloads of energy and fly through space for no reason. There had to be some astrophage needed from Venus, or it would just stay on the sun. Wait, it had to be astrophage like needed something from Venus. Okay, that's what it was. Sorry, babe. It's the same sun. And it needed something from the sun too, but would stay on Venus. Wait, what? Did be something the first needed from Venus? Oh yeah, sorry. And it needed something from the sun too. Okay. Yep, sorry, I was like not locked in. Yep, that's what's happening. The sun part's pretty easy. It was there for energy. Same reason plants grew leaves. Got to get that sweet, sweet energy if you're gonna be a life form. Makes sense. So what about Venus? I picked up a pen and fidgeted with it as I thought. According to the Indian Space Research Organization, you guys get going up to 0.92 times speed of light. I pointed at them. Didn't know we could do that, did ya? Figure out your velocity? They use Doppler shift analysis of the light you emit to work it out, and because of that, they also know you're going both directions to and from Venus. I frowned. But if you hit an atmosphere at the speed, you should die. So why don't you? I wrapped my forehead with my knuckle. Because you can handle any amount of heat, right? So you can blast into the atmosphere. You don't get any hotter. Okay. But you'd at least have to slow down. So you'd just be at the utmost atmosphere of Venus. Then you what? Then you turn around and go back to the sun? Why? I stared at the screen for a solid 10 minutes, lost in thought. Alright, enough of this. I want to know how you find Venus. I went to the local hardware store and bought a bunch of 2x4s, 3/4 inch plywood power tools, and other stuff I'd need. Steve the army guy helped me carry a lot of it in. Jerk army guy did nothing. Over the next 6 months, I built a light-proof closet with a shelf in it. It was just big enough for me to get in and out of. Wait, I might have said months. It was 6 hours. Sorry, babe. The microscope on the shelf. The door was plywood panel that I could remove with screws. I ran power and video lines into the closet through the hole that I plugged up with putty to make sure no light could get in there either. I set my IR camera up on the microscope and sealed up the closet. Out in the lab, the monitor showed the infrared light on the camera. The infrared light the camera saw. It was basically a frequency shift. Very low bands of IR would show up as red. Higher energy bands would be orange, yellow, and so on up the rainbow. I could see the astrophage cells as little red blobs, which was expected. At the consistent temperature of 96.415 degrees Celsius, they would naturally emit an IR wavelength of 7.8 microns or so, the low end of what I'd set the camera to look for. It was a good confirmation that the setup was working. But I didn't care about that dark red colour. I wanted to see a bright yellow flash. That would be the Petrova frequency the astrophage spit out to move around. If any of my astrophages moved even the tiniest bit, I'd see a very obvious yellow flash. but it never came. Nothing happened. Nothing at all. Usually I'd see a jerky motion from one of them every few seconds, but now there was nothing. So, I said, you little brats have settled down, huh? Light. Whatever the navigation system was, it was based on light. I suspected that would be the case. What else could you use in space? There's no sound, no smell. It would have to be light, gravity, or electromagnetism. And light's the easiest of those three to detect, at least as far as evolution is concerned. For my next experiment, I taped a little white LED and a watch battery together. Of course, I wired it backward at first, and the LED didn't light up. That's pretty much the rule in electronics. You never get diodes right the first try. Anyway, I rewired it correctly and the LED lit up. I taped the whole contraption to the inside wall of the closet. I managed to position it so the astrophage on the sample slide would have well, wait, would have a direct line of sight on it. And I sealed everything up again. Now, from the astrophage's point of view, there was a lot of black nothingness and one shining spot of white. That's kind of what Venus might look like if you're out in space looking directly into the sun. Away from the sun. Yeah, I'm actually really tired because I was sleeping at Sophie's house last night and I went to work all day. And then I saw Sophie and Sadie like in the afternoon. I just like I've been busy today. But like I haven't been like busy, but I've just been like sleepy. Sleepy. I think that's why I keep like stumbling on words. I hope you don't mind getting a bit sidetracked there. Okay, I'll get back to the book. They didn't budge, not a hint of motion at all. Humph, I said. To be fair, it wasn't likely to work. If you were at the sun, looking away from the brightest splotch of light you could see, you'd probably zero in on Mercury, not Venus. Mercury is smaller than Venus, and it's a lot closer, so you'd see more light. Why Venus? I mused. But then I thought of a better question. How did you guys identify Venus? Why did they move randomly? My theory. By pure chance, every few seconds or so, Astrophage thought it had spotted Venus, so it thrusted in that direction, but then the moment passed it stopped thrusting. The key had to do with frequencies of light. My boys didn't wiggle at all in the darkness, but it wasn't just about the sheer volume of light, or that they had gone for the LED. It had to be something to do with the frequency of the light. Okay, no, I think we're fine. Frequency of the light. Planets don't just reflect light, they also emit it. Everything emits light. The temperature of the object defines the wavelength of the light emitted. Planets are no exception. So maybe Astrophage looked at Venus's IR signature. It wouldn't be as bright as Mercury's, but it would be a distinct, different color. A little googling told me Venus's average temperature was 462 degrees Celsius. I had a whole drawer full of replacement bulbs for microscopes and other lab stuff. I grabbed one and hooked it up to variable power supply. Incandescent bulbs work by getting the filament so hot it emits visible light. That happens at around 2500 degrees Celsius. I didn't need anything so dramatic. I just needed a measly 462 degrees. I adjusted power going through the bulb and down, watching with an IR camera until I got the exact light frequency I wanted. I moved the whole contraption into the text closet and watched the monitor with my boys on it, and turned to the artificial Venus. Nothing. Absolutely no movement from the little jerks. What do you want from me? I demanded. I pulled my goggles off and threw them on the ground. I jammed my fingers on the table. As if I were an astronomer, someone showed me a blob of light. How would I know if it was Venus? I answered myself. I'd look at the IR signature. But that's not what Astrophage does. Okay. Someone shows me a blob of light and says I'm not allowed to use emitted IR to work out the temperature of the body. How else could I find out if it's Venus? Spectroscopy. Yeah, I was so confident too. Look for carbon dioxide. I raised my eyebrow as the idea came to me. When light hits gas molecules, the electrons get all worked up. They calm down and re-emit the energy as light, but the frequency of the photons they emit is very specific to the molecules involved. Astronomers use this for decades to know what gases are out there, far, far away. That's what spectroscopy is all about. Venus's atmosphere is 90 times Earth's pressure and almost entirely carbon dioxide. Its spectroscopy signal of CO2 would be overwhelmingly strong. Mercury had no carbon dioxide at all, and the nearest competitor would be Earth. Yes? What are you doing? Okay, I think I just pressed resume, so hopefully that's all good, but Mina just walked in, so I'm so sorry that there's gonna be a little gap in here where Mina came in. I'll try to cut it out when I put in like a different editing thing, but I don't know how this program works, so I'm so sorry, babe. Astronomers use this for decades to know what gases are out there far, far away. That's what spectroscopy is. Venus's atmosphere is 90 times Earth's pressure and almost entirely carbon dioxide. Its spectroscopy signature of CO2 would be overwhelmingly strong. Mercury had no carbon dioxide at all, so the nearest competitor would be Earth. We have minuscule CO2 signature compared to Venus. Maybe Astrophage used emission spectra to find Venus? New plan. The lab had seemingly infinite supply of light filters. Pick a frequency and there's a light filter for it. I looked up the spectral signature of carbon dioxide. The peak wavelengths were 4.626 microns and 18.31 microns. I found the appropriate filters and built a little box for them. Outside, I put a small white light bulb. I knew I had a box that would emit the spectral signature of carbon dioxide. I put it to the test and went out to watch the monitor. Larry, Curly, and Mo hung out on their slide just like they had all day long. I flicked the light box and watched for any reaction. The astrophage left. They didn't just meander towards the light. They're absolutely gone. Absolutely gone. I'd been recording the camera input, of course. I ran it back to watch frame by frame. Between two frames, they simply disappeared. Good news. The astrophage retracted to carbon dioxide spectral signature. Bad news. My three irreplaceable 10-micron wide astrophage had launched off somewhere, maybe at velocities approaching speed of light, and I had no idea where they went. Crap! Midnight, darkness everywhere. The two army guys changed shift to two guys I didn't know. I missed Steve. I had aluminium foil and duct tape. Up over every window of the lab. I sealed the cracks around the entrances and exits with electrical tape. I turned off every piece of equipment that had a readout or LED of any kind. I put my watch in the drawer because it had a glow-in-the-dark paint on the hands. I let my eyes adjust to the total darkness. If I saw something so much as a single shape that I thought wasn't my imagination, I sought out the light leak and put tape over it. Finally, I reached a level of darkness so intense I couldn't see anything. Opening or closing my eyes had no effect at all. The next step was my newly invented IR goggles. The lab had many things, but infrared goggles were not among them. I'd considered asking Steve, the army guy, if he could score some. I probably could have called Strat and she would have had the president of Peru personally deliver them or something. But this was faster. The goggles were just the LCD output screens of my IR camera with a bunch of tape around them. I pressed into my face and added more tape, then more and more and more. Sure looked ridiculous, but whatever. I fired up the camera and looked around the lab. Plenty of heat signatures. The walls were still warm from the sunlight earlier that day. Everything electrical had a glow, and my body shined like a beacon. I adjusted the frequency range to look for more hotter things, specifically over 90 degrees Celsius. I crawled into my makeshift microscope closet and looked in the light box I had used for the CO2 spectral emission. Astrophage are only 10 microns across. No chance I'd seen something so small with the camera, or with my eyes for that matter. My little aliens are very hot, and they stay hot. So if they're not moving, they will spend the last 6 hours or so slowly heating up their surroundings, and that was the hope. I panned it out. I immediately saw a circle of light on one of the plastic filters. Oh, thank God, I gasped. It was very faint, but it was there. The spot was about 3 millimeters across and grew fainter and colder away from the center. The little fellow had been heating up the plastic for hours. I scanned back and forth across the two plastic squares. I quickly found a second spot. My experiment worked way better than I expected. They saw what they thought was Venus and beelined for it. When they hit the light filters, they probably couldn't go any farther. They probably kept pushing until I turned off the light. Anyway, if I could just confirm that all three astrophiles were present, I could bag their filters, then spend however long I needed to find and harvest the boys from them with a microscope and pipette, and there it was, the third astrophage. The gang's all here, I said. I reached into my pocket for a sample bag and got it ready very carefully. What? Babe, I'm gonna try the sentence again. I reached into my pocket for a sample bag and got ready to very carefully pull the filter off the light box, and that's when I saw the fourth astrophage, just minding its own business. A fourth cell. It was right there in the same general cluster as the first three on the filters. Holy. I'd been staring at these guys for a week. There was no way I would have missed this one. There's only going to be one explanation. One of the astrophages divided. I'd accidentally made the astrophage reproduce. I stared at the full spot of light for a full minute, taking the magnitude of what had just happened. Breeding astrophage meant we would have an unlimited supply to study. Kill them, poke them, take them apart, do whatever we wanted. This was a game changer. Hello, Shemp, I said. I spent the next 2 days obsessively studying this new behavior. I didn't even go home. I just slept in the lab. Steve, the army guy, brought me breakfast. Great guy. I should have shared my findings with the rest of the science community, but I wanted to be sure. Peer review may have fallen to the wayside, but I at least could self-review. Better than nothing. It first bothered me. The first thing that bothered me, CO2 spectral emissions are 4.6 to 18.31 microns, but astrophage are only 10 microns across, so it couldn't really interact with the light that had a larger wavelength. How could it even see the 18.31 micron band? I repeated my earlier spectral experiment with just the 18.31 micron filter and got a result I didn't expect. Strange things happened. First off, two of the astrophage whipped over the filter. They saw the light and went right for it. But how? It should be impossible for astrophage to interact with a wavelength that big. I mean, literally impossible. Light is a funny thing. Its wavelength defines what it can and can't interact with. Anything smaller than the wavelength is functionally non-existent to that photon. So why is there a mesh over the... Wait. That's why there's a mesh over the microwave, not why is that? The holes in the mesh are too small for microwaves to pass through. Visible light with much shorter wavelengths can go through freely, so you get to watch your food cook without melting your face off. Astrophage is smaller than 18.31 microns, but somehow still absorbs light at that frequency. How? That's not even the strangest thing that happened. Yes, two of them took off for the filter, yes. But the other two stayed put. They didn't seem to care. They just hung out to the side. Maybe they didn't interact with larger wavelengths. Okay. So I did one more experiment. I shined the 4.62 micron light at them again, got the same results. The same two went right for the filter as before, and the other two just didn't care. And there it was. I couldn't be 100% certain, but I was pretty sure I'd discovered the whole astrophage life cycle. It clicked in my mind like puzzle pieces finally fitting together. The two holdouts didn't want to go to Venus anymore. They want to go back to the sun. Why? Because one of them is divided to create the other. Astrophage hang out on the surface of the sun gathering energy via heat. They store it internally in some way no one understands. Then when they have enough, they migrate to Venus to breed, using stored energy to fly through space using infrared light as a propellant. Lots of species migrate to breed. Why would astrophage be any different? The Aussies already worked out that the inside of the astrophage wasn't much different from Earth life. It needed carbon and oxygen to make the complex proteins required for DNA, mitochondria, and all the other fun stuff found in cells. There's plenty of hydrogen on the sun, but other elements just aren't present. So the astrophage migrates to the nearest supply of carbon dioxide, Venus. First, it follows magnetic field lines and goes straight away from the sun's north pole. It has to do that, or the light from the sun would be too blinding to find Venus. Then going straight up the pole means astrophage will have a full view of Venus' entire orbital path, no portion of it occluded by the sun. That's why astrophage is so inconsistent on reacting to magnetic fields. It only cares about them in the beginning of its journey and no other time. Then it looks at Venus' massive carbon dioxide spectral signature. Well, not really looks for, probably more simple stimulus response than indicated by the thing. Wait, which is indicated by the 4.26 and 18.31 micron light bands. Anyways, once it sees Venus, it goes straight for it. path it takes, straight away from the solar pole to the and then sharply turning towards Venus. That's the Petrova line. A heroic astrophage reaches the uppermost atmosphere of Venus, collects CO2 it needs, and then can finally reproduce. After that, both parent and child return to the sun and the cycle begins anew. It's simple, really. Get energy, get resources, and make copies. It's the same thing that all life on Earth does. So, okay, and that was why two of my little stooges didn't walk towards the light. So how does astrophage find the sun? My guess, it looks an extremely bright thing and heads that way. I separated Mo and Shemp, the sun seekers, from Larry and Curly, the Venus seekers. I put Larry and Curly on a different slide and put it in a light-sealed sample container. Then I set up an experiment in the dark closet for Mo and Shemp. This time, I put a bright incandescent bulb in there and turned it on. I expected them to head right toward it, but no dice. They didn't budge, probably not bright enough. I went to the photography store downtown. San Francisco has a lot of photography enthusiasts. But the largest, brightest, most powerful flash I could find. I placed the bulb with the flash, did the experiment again. Mo and Shemp took the bait. I had to sit down and take a breath. I should have taken a nap. I hadn't slept in 36 hours. This was too exciting. I pulled out my cell phone and dialed Strat's number. She answered halfway through the first ring. Dr. Grace, she said. Find something? Yeah, I said. I figured out how astrophage reproduce and managed to make it happen. Silence for a second. You successfully bred astrophage? Yes. Non-destructively? She asked. I had 3 cells, and now I have 4. They're all alive and well. Silence for a second. Stay there. She hung up. Huh? I said. I put my phone back in my lab pocket. Guess she's on her way. Steve, the army guy, burst into the lab. Dr. Grace? What? Yeah? Please come with me. Okay, I said. Let me just get my astrophage samples put away. There are lab techs on the way to come deal with it. You have to come with me now. Oh, okay. The next 12 hours were unique. Steve, the army guy, drove me to a high school football field where a US Marine Corps helicopter had already landed. Without words, they hustled me into the chopper and up we went into the sky. I tried not to look down. The chopper took me to Travis Air Force Base about 60 miles north of the city. Did the Marines often land at Air Force bases? I don't know much about the military, but it seemed odd. It also seemed a bit extreme to send in the Marines to just keep me from driving through a couple hours of traffic, but okay. There was a jeep waiting for me on the tarmac when the helicopter landed, with an Air Force guy standing next to it. He introduced himself, I swear he did, but I don't remember his name. He drove me across the tarmac to the waiting jet. No, not a passenger jet, not a Learjet or anything like that. This is a fighter jet. I don't know what kind. Like I said, I don't know military stuff. My guide hustled me up the ladder and into the seat behind the pilot. He gave me a pill and a little paper cup of water. Take this. What is it? It'll keep you from puking all over our nice clean cockpit. Okay, I swallowed the pill. And it'll help you sleep. What? He pulled away and the ground crew pulled up the ladder. The pilot didn't say a word to me. 10 minutes later, we took off like a bat of hell. I never felt acceleration like that in my life. The pill did its job. I definitely would have puked. Where are we going? I asked through the headset. I'm sorry, sir, I'm not allowed to speak to you. This is going to be a boring trip then. They usually are, he said. I don't know exactly where I fell asleep, but within the first minutes of takeoff, 36 hours of mad science plus whatever was in that pill put me right into dreamland regardless of ridiculous jet engine noises surrounding me. I woke up in darkness to a jolt. We'd landed. Welcome to Hawaii, sir, said the pilot. Hawaii? Why am I in Hawaii? I wasn't given that information. The jet taxied onto some side runway or whatever. The ground crew had brought our ladder. I hadn't gotten halfway down the ladder when I heard, Dr. Grace, this way, please. It was a man in a US Navy uniform. Where the hell am I? I demanded. Naval Station Pearl Harbor, said the officer. But not for long. Please follow me. Sure, why not? They put me into another jet with another non-talkative pilot. The only difference was this time it was a Navy jet instead of an Air Force jet. We flew for a long time. I lost track of the hours. Keeping track was meaningless anyways. I didn't know how long we'd been in the air. Finally, I kid you not, we landed on an honest-to-goodness aircraft carrier. Next thing I know, I was on the flight deck looking like an idiot. They gave me earmuffs and a coat, and I shuffled over to the helipad. A Navy chopper was waiting for me. Will this trip end? Like ever? I asked. They ignored me and got me strapped in. The chopper took off immediately. This time the flight wasn't nearly so long, just an hour or so. This should be interesting, said the pilot. It was the only thing he'd said the whole flight. We descended, and the landing gear deployed. Below us was another aircraft carrier. I squinted at it. Something looked different. What was it? Oh, right. They had a big Chinese flag flying over it. Is that a Chinese aircraft carrier? I asked. Yes, sir. Are we, a US Navy helicopter, going to land on a Chinese aircraft carrier? Yes, sir. I see. We landed on the carrier's helipad with a bunch of Chinese Navy guys watching us with interest. There would be no post-flight servicing of this chopper. My pilot leered through the windows at them, and they leered right back. As soon as I stepped out, he took off again. I was in China's hands now. A Navy man came forward and gestured for me to follow him. I don't think anyone spoke English, but I got the general idea. He led me to the door in the outside tower structure, and we went inside. We wound through passageways, stairwells, sorry, babe, and rooms I didn't even understand the purpose of. All the while, Chinese sailors watched me with curiosity. Finally, he saw the door with Chinese characters on it. He opened the door and pointed inside. I walked in and he slammed the door behind me. So much for my guide. I think it was an officers' conference room. At least, that was my assumption based on the big table with 15 people sitting around it. They all turned their heads to look up at me. Some were white, some were black, some were Asian, some wore lab coats, others wore suits. Strat, of course, sat at the head of the table. Dr. Grace, how was your trip? How was my trip? I said. I got dragged halfway across the gosh damn world without any notice. She held up her hand. It was just a pleasantry, Dr. Grace. I don't actually care how your trip was. She stood and addressed the room. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Dr. Ryland Grace from the United States. He figured out how to breed astrophage. Gasps came from across the table. One man shot to his feet and spoke with a thick German accent. Are you serious? Strat, warum heißt nor English? Strat interrupted. Why are we only hearing this now? The German demanded. I wanted to confirm it first. While Dr. Grace was en route, I had the technicians pack up his lab. They collected 4 live astrophage from his lab. I only left him 3. An elderly man in a lab coat spoke Japanese in a calm, soothing voice. Next to him, a younger Japanese man in a charcoal suit translated. Dr. Matsuka would like to respectfully request a detailed description of the process. Strat stepped aside and gestured to her chair. Doctor, have a seat and lay it all out for us. Hold on, who are these people? Why am I on a Chinese aircraft carrier? Have you ever heard of Skype? This is an international body of high-level scientists and political operatives who have assembled to spearhead Project Hail Mary. What's that? I think it'll take a while to explain. Everyone here is eager to hear about the findings of your astrophage experiments. Let's start with that. I shuffled to the front of the room and sat awkwardly at the head of the table. All eyes turned on me. So I told them. I told them about the experiments, the wooden closets. I explained to them all the tests and what I did for each one and how I did them. Then I explained my conclusions. As I told them my hypothesis about the astrophage life cycle and how it works and why. There are a few questions from the assembled scientists and politicians, but mostly they just listened and took notes. Several had translators whispering in their ears during the process. So yeah, I said, that's pretty much everything. I mean, it's not rigorously tested yet, but it seems pretty simple. The German guy raised his hand. Would it be possible to breed astrophage on a larger scale? Everyone leaned forward a little. Apparently this was a pretty important question, and it was on everyone's mind. I was taken aback by the sudden intensity of the room. Even Stat seemed unusually interested. Well, she said, please answer, Mr. Voigt. Sure, I said. I mean, why not? Wait, sorry, it wasn't please answer Mr. Voigt. It was please answer Minister Voigt. I'm assuming he's a German person. Okay, back to the story. Sure, I said. I mean, why not? How would you do it? Asked Strat. I guess I'd make a big elbow-shaped ceramic pipe and fill it with carbon dioxide. Make one end of it as hot as you can get it, and have a bright light there. Wrap a magnetic coil around it and simulate the magnetic field of the sun. Put an IR light emitter on the other end of the elbow, and have it emit light at 4.26 and 18.31 microns. Make the inside of that pipe as black as you can, and that should do it. And how does that do it? She said. I shrugged. The astrophage will gather energy at the sun side. When they're ready to breed, they'll follow the magnetic field of the pipe's elbow. They'll see the IR light at the other end and head towards it. Seeing that light and being exposed to carbon dioxide makes them breed. Then the parent and daughter cells will go back to the sun side. Simple enough. A political-looking man raised his hand and spoke with some kind of African accent. How much astrophage could be made this way, and how fast is this possible? It would have a doubling time, I said. Like algae or bacteria, I don't know how long it is, but considering the sun is getting dim, it must be pretty quick. A woman in a lab coat had been on her phone. She set it down and spoke with a thick Chinese accent. Our scientists have reproduced the results. Minister Voigt scowled at her. How did you even know his process? He just told you. Spies, presumably, said Strat. The German huffed. How dare you circumvent us with. Shh, said Strat. We're past all that. Miss C, do you have any additional information to share? Yes, she said. We estimate the doubling time could be just over 8 days under optimal conditions. What does that mean? The African diplomat said. How much can we make? Well, I launched up my phone's calculator app and tapped a few buttons. If you start with 150 astrophage we have and breed them for a year, you'd end up with having about 173,000 kilograms of astrophage. And what would this astrophage be at maximum energy density? Would it all be ready to reproduce? So you want, I guess you'd call it enriched astrophage? Yes, that's a perfect word for it. We want astrophage that is holding as much energy as it can. I guess that could be arranged, I said. First, rate up the number of astrophages you want, then expose them to lots of heat energy, but don't let them see any carbon dioxide spectral lines. They'll collect energy and just sort of sit there waiting until they can get somewhere to CO2. But what if we need 2 million kilograms of enriched astrophage? Said the diplomat. It's doubling every 8 days, I said. 2 million kilograms would be possible in 4 doublings or so. So, 1 month longer. A woman leaned forward on the table, her fingers stapled. We might just have a chance, she said in an American accent. An outside chance, said Voigt. There is hope, said the Japanese translator, presumably speaking for Dr. Matsuka. We still need to talk about it amongst ourselves, said Strat. Go get some rest. The sailor outside will show you to your bunk. But I want to know about Project Hail Mary. Oh, believe me, you will. I slept for 14 hours. Aircraft carriers are awesome in many ways, but they aren't five-star hotels. The Chinese had given me a clean, comfy cot in the officer's bunk room. I had no complaints. I could have slept on the flight deck, I was so tired. I felt something weird on my forehead when I woke up. I reached up and found it was a post-it note. Somebody put a post-it note on my head while I was asleep. I pulled it off and read, "Clean clothes and toiletries in the duffel under your bunk. I've show this note to any sailor when you're cleaned up." And then it's like a line of like Chinese characters, which I am unable to read. And then it's signed from Strat. She's such a pain in my bum, I mumbled. I stumbled out of my cot. A few officers gave me passing glances, but otherwise ignored me. I found the duffel, and, as promised, there were clothes and dental hygiene stuff and soap. I glanced around the bunk room and saw through a doorway into the locker room. I used the bathroom, or head, I guess, because I was on a ship. Then I took a shower with 3 other guys. I dried off and put on a jumpsuit onesie Strat had left me. It was bright yellow and had Chinese writing along the back and a big red stripe down the left leg of my pants. My guess was to make sure everyone knew I was a foreign civilian and not allowed in certain places. I flagged down a passing sailor and showed him the note. He nodded and gestured for me to follow. He led me through a maze of twisty little passages, all alike, until we arrived at the room I'd been in the previous day. I stepped in to see Strat and some of her teammates, a subset of the previous day's gang. Just Minister Voigt, Chinese scientist, I think her name was Z, and a guy in the Russian military uniform. The Russian had been there the previous day but didn't say anything. They all looked deep in concentration, and the table was littered with paper. They mumbled to one another, and wait, clocking it. They mumbled to one another here and there. I didn't know the exact relationship going on, but Strat was definitely at the head of the table. She looked up at me as I entered. Ah, Dr. Grace, you look refreshed. She gestured to her left. There's food on the credenza. And there was rice, steamed bun, deep fried dough sticks, and an urn of coffee. I rushed over and helped myself. I was hungry as heck. I sat at the conference table with a full plate and a cup of coffee. So, I said with my mouth full of rice, are you going to tell me why we're on a Chinese aircraft carrier? I needed an aircraft carrier. The Chinese gave me one. Well, they lent it to me. I slurped my coffee. There was a time when something like that would surprise me, but not anymore. Commercial air travel takes too long and is prone to delays, she said. Military aircraft work on whatever schedule they want and travel supersonically. I need to be able to get experts from anywhere on Earth to the same room with no delays. This Strat can be extremely persuasive, said Minister Voigt. I shoveled more food into my mouth. Blame whoever gave her all that authority, I said. Voight chuckled. I was part of that decision, actually. I'm from Germany's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the equivalent of your country's Secretary of State. I paused my chewing. Wow, I managed to say, and gulped down the mouthful. You're the most high-ranking person I've ever met. No, I'm not. He pointed to Strat. She put a piece of paper in front of her. Wait, she put a piece of paper in front of me, not her, baby. Um, this is what led to Project Hail Mary. You're showing him, Voight said. Now? Without getting him a clearance? Strat put her hand on my shoulder. Dr. Riley and Grace, I hereby grant you top secret clearance to all information pertaining to Project Hail Mary. That's not what I meant, Voight said. There's processes and background checks too. No time, Strat said. No time for any of that stuff. That's why you put me in charge. Speed. She turned toward me and tapped the paper. These are readings from amateur astronomers all over the world. They show something very important. The page had columns and numbers. I noticed the column titles: Alpha Centauri, Sirius, Luton 726-8, and so on. Stars, I said? These are all stars in our local cluster. And wait, did you just say amateur astronomers? You can tell the German Minister of Foreign Affairs what to do and why you don't have any professional astronomers working for you. Wait, and why don't oh, you tell him like what's going on? Like, okay, sorry, I was like missing that a little bit. I do, but this is historical data collected over the past several years. Professional astronomers don't study local stars. They look at faraway things. It's the amateurs who log data on local stuff, like train spotters, hobbyists in the backyard, some of them with $10,000 worth of equipment. I picked up the paper. Okay, so what am I looking at? Luminosity readings, normalized across thousands of amateur-generated datasets and corrected for known weather and visibility conditions. Supercomputers were involved. The point is, our sun is not really the only star that's getting dimmer. Really, I said. Oh, that makes perfect sense. Astrophage can travel at 0.92 times the speed of light, and if it can go dormant and stay alive long enough, it could infect nearby stars. It's spores. It's like a mold. It can spread from star to star. That's our theory, yes, said Strat. The data goes back decades. It's not deeply reliable, but the trends are there. And the NSA back calculated that. Wait, NSA? The US National Security Agency? They have some of the best supercomputers in the world. I needed their supercomputers and engineers to try all kinds of scenarios and propagation models for how astrophage could get around the galaxy. Back to the point, these local stars have been dimming for decades, and at the rate of dimming, and the rate of dimming increases exponentially, just like we're seeing in the sun. She handed me another piece of paper. It had a bunch of dots connected by lines. Above each dot was a star name. Owing to the speed of light, our observations of the dimming had to be adjusted for the distances of the stars and whatnot. There's a clear pattern of infection from star to star. We know when a star was infected and by which infected star. Our sun was infected by a star called WISE 08550714. That star was infected by Sirius, which was infected by Epsilon Eridani. From there, the trail goes cold. I peered at the chart. Huh? WISE 08550714 also infected Wolf 358, Larlandite 21185, and Ross 128. Yes, every star eventually infects all of its neighbors. Judging from our data, we think astrophage has a minimum range of just under 8 light years. Maximum range of just under 8 light years. Any star within that range of an infected star will eventually be infected. I looked at the data. Why 8 light years? Why not more or less? Our best guess is astrophage can only survive so long without a star that it can coast about. Wait. Ooh. Astrophage can only survive so long without a star, and it can coast about 8 light years in that time. That's sensible, from an evolutionary point of view. Most stars have another star within 8 light years or so, and that's as far as astrophage had to evolve to travel while sporing. Probably, Strat said. Nobody noticed the stars are getting dimmer, I said. They only just got about 10% dimmer before they stopped dimming. We don't know why. It's not obvious to the naked eye, but if our sun dims by 10%, we're all dead, I said. Pretty much. Z leaned before me at the table. Her posture was extremely proper. Miss Strat has not told you the most important part yet. The Russian nodded. It was the first time I'd seen him move at all. Z continued. Do you know what Torsetti is? Do I know? I said. I mean, I know it's a star. It's about 12 light years away, I think. 11.9, said Z. Very good. Most don't know that. I teach junior high school science, I said. These things come up. They and the Russian shot each other surprised looks. Then they looked at Strat. Strat stared them down. There's more to him than that. Z regained her composure, not that she'd lost much of it anyways. In any event, Torcidi is very much inside the cluster of infected stars. In fact, it's near the center. Okay, I'm sensing something special about it. It's not infected. Every star around it is. There's two very infected stars well within 8 light years of Torcidi, yet it remains uninfected. Why? Stretch shuffled through her papers. That's what we want to find out. So we're going to make a ship and send it there. I snorted. You can't just make an interstellar ship. We don't have the technology. We don't have anything close to the technology. The Russian spoke for the first time. Actually, my friend, we do. Strat gestured to the Russian. Dr. Komarov is. Please call me Dmitri, he said. Dmitri heads up the Russian Federation search into astrophage, she said. It's a pleasure to meet you, he said. I am happy to report that we can make an interstellar voyage. No, we can't, I said. Unless you've got an alien spaceship you've never told anyone about. In a way, we do, he said. We have many alien spaceships. We call them astrophage. You see, my group has studied the energy management of astrophage. It's very interesting. I suddenly forgot everything else in the room. Oh God, please tell me you understand where the heat goes. I can't figure out where the heck it's. I can't figure out what the heck it's doing with the heat energy. We figured this out, yes, with lasers, with a very illuminating experiment. Was that a pun? It was. Good one. We both laughed. Strat glared at us. Dmitri cleared his throat. Yes. We pointed tight focused 1 kilowatt lasers at a single astrophage cell. As usual, it did not get hotter. But after 25 minutes, light starts to bounce off it. Our little astrophage is full. Good meal. It consumed 1.8 megajoules of light. Does not want any more. But this is very much energy. Where does it put all of this energy? I'm leaning way too far forward of the table, but I can't help myself. Where? We measure astrophage cells before and after experiment, of course. Of course. Astrophage cell is now 17 nanograms heavier. You see where this goes, yes? No, it can't be. It must have gained that weight from reactions with the air or something. No, it was in a vacuum for this test, of course. Oh my God, I was giddy. 17 nanograms times 9 times 10 to the 16th, 1.5 megajoules. I flopped back onto a chair. Holy, I just mean, wow. That is how I also felt, yes. Mass conversion. As the great Albert Einstein once said, E equals mc squared. That's an absurd amount of energy and mass. A modern nuclear plant can power the entire city for a year with the energy stored in 1 kilogram of uranium. Yes, that's it. The entire output of a nuclear reactor for a year comes from a single kilogram of mass. Astrophage can apparently do this in either direction. It takes heat energy and somehow turns it into mass. Then, when it wants the energy back, it turns that mass into energy and into the forming of the Petrova frequency light. And it uses that to propel itself along in space. So not only is it the perfect energy storage medium, it's the perfect spaceship engine. Evolution can be insanely effective when you leave it alone for a few billion years. I rubbed my head. This is just crazy. In a good way, though. It's some internally produced antimatter, you think? Something like that? We do not know, but it definitely increases in mass. And then, using light as thrust, it loses mass appropriate to energy released. That's Dmitri. I want to hang out with you. Like, can we hang out? Buy you a beer, a vodka, or anything. I bet there's an officers' club on the boat, right? It would be my pleasure. Glad you're making friends, said Strat. But you've got a lot of work to do before you start hitting the bars. Me? What do I have to do? You need to design and create an astrophage breeding facility. I blinked, and then I shot to my feet. You're gonna make an astrophage powered ship? They all nodded. Holy cow, it's the most efficient rocket fuel ever. How much would we need? Oh, 2 million kilograms, right? That's what you wanted to know how long it would take to make that much. Yes, said Z. For a 100,000 kilogram ship, we would need 2 million kilograms of astrophage to get it to Tau CD. And thanks to you, we now know how to activate the astrophage and make it generate thus at will. Oh my god, my is stomping him out. I think she stopped away. I sat back down and pulled out my phone and launched the calculator app. This would take like a lot of energy, more energy than the world has. It would be around 10 to 23rd joules. What? Oh, it would be around 10 to the 23rd joules. Okay, sorry, I was confused. The largest nuclear reactor on Earth makes 8 gigawatts. It would take the reactor 2 million years to create that much energy. We have ideas for finding the energy, said Strat. Your job is to make the breeder. Start small and get a prototype type thing. Go on. Oh, so sleepy. This chapter's over soon now. Sleep. Okay, sure, I said. But I didn't exactly love the militaries of the world grand tour on the way home. On the way here, can I take a passenger jet home? Coach is fine. You are home, said Strat. The flight hangar is empty. Just tell me what you need, including staff, and I'll make it happen. I looked at the others in the conference room. Z, Voight, and Dimitri all nodded. Yes, this was real. No, Strat was not kidding. Why? I demanded. Why the heck can't you just be normal, Strat? You wanted a fast military transport, well, okay. But why not just work out of an airbase or something sane people would do? Because we'll be experimenting with a bunch of astrophars once we spread it up. And if we accidentally activate even a couple kilograms of that stuff, the resulting explosion will be bigger than the largest nuclear bomb ever made. Zabuma, said Dmitri, made by my country. 15 megatons. Boom. Strat continued. So we'd rather be out in the middle of the ocean where it won't eradicate any cities. Oh, I said. And as we get more and more astrophage, we'll go further and further into sea. Anyways, head down to the hangar deck. I have carpenters building accommodations and offices as we speak. Pick up something you like and lay claim. This is our life now, said Dimitri. Welcome. Okay, we on page 100. Woo! With chapter 6. That is all for now. Good night, sweetie. I hope you're enjoying your concert.